just leave it now. Don't touch anything.
It's recording, right?
Yes.
Amy, are you recording?
Sometimes just a software glitch. It's quite possible.
Yeah, it could be.
One of the forms in religious music I just thought of right now was the Aarti. That typical Aarti. You just change the name of the god and sing it. You don't know about this, but there is a typical Aarti, the Om Jai Jagadish Hare.
Oh, that one I know, yeah.
Yeah, so they just change the name of the god and sing it for that god.
Okay.
But apart from that, it's exactly the same.
I used to hear that around Diwali a lot. In
Yeah,
hills.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
So you can sing that same. It's a hymn, right?
Yeah.
An Aarti would be a hymn.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that you could sing for.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's you have a form, you have a structure.
You just
You
change
just
the
change
name
the
of
name
the
of
god.
the god. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's with regard to this, even this melodic rhythmic thing, the chant-based music is very interesting with the Buddhist traditions, because they've got various different kinds of chants, right? And different, they've got something with tea. They've got a bunch of chants that go with this form, with the tea form. And then there's something which are associated with the Panchila chants, right? And the others which are controlled by the Hinayana Buddhists, stuff like that. And there's similarities in each of them. There's obviously a lot of similarity in the teachings, right? But there are a lot of controls with regard to how much liberty you can take with the melody of the chant, for example, or with the rhythm of it, how much noise you can make around the chant. Whether the chant is supposed to be used to prepare you for meditation, or whether it is to be used to actually study, And on the Christian side of things, and it broke up into various different pieces, because once the Europeans started moving outwards, then the Spaniards, they overran South America, and the kind of chants that they evolved over there were very different from the kind of papal chants that we have today, or the chants of the Russian Orthodox Church, which are very much around today. We don't have too many, I think, Protestantic chants, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really know, but they're interesting as well, because if you learn the words of what's going on, then they have the similar rhythmic thing about them, and you'll get the rhythm, but if you don't know the words, and there's no chance that you're going to be able to figure out what's going on.
One of the things I find very interesting about religious music is it describes the religion to you. For example, Christian music is all about Jesus, but in Hinduism you would have music which would pray to the elements, and it's not as towards a god. It describes that Hinduism is not as monotheistic.
But it's not, right?
So it also describes the kind of religion you're following.
It depends, man. You could pluck out a lot of music that could refer to God from Christianity, and it refers to God and not Jesus, and then you won't know what's going on.
Yeah, but the Jesus was son of God, and God was God.
Yeah, but if there's
Only
a song
one
that's
God.
about God, it could be maybe a song about, it could be it could be a Hindu hymn that's been translated into English, and we won't know what's going on, and it's just about God in general. Because there's a lot of people who go about the universality of religion. Ultimately, there's all religions are one, the one God, all that shit. Those guys are going to do all this stuff, right?
All that shit is what made me interested about religious music, because when I listen to a few the mainstream religion, I listen to a few Sufi music, I listen to a bit of gospel music, and I've always listened to a lot of Hindu religious music, and what they teach is something else, but what they sing about is sometimes very similar. What they end up artistically writing and romanticizing about God, they're romanticizing about very similar things.
The edge of understanding.
So yeah, that is one thing.
वो तो है ही ना, like तुम हिंदू हो मुसलमान हो, like you all have the same problems. घर में खाना नहीं है, हाथ में पैसा नहीं है, तुम रोटी कपड़ा मकान कुछ भी नहीं है तो यू विल एंड अप सिंगिंग द सेम थिंग्स. हे जीसस मुझे मकान दे दो, हे हिंद विष्णु मुझे मकान दे दो, क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है. मतलब अल्टीमेटली यू विल एंड अप because again it's that personification of something that you want out of your life. You wish that your life would have been this successful.
Controllable thing.
हाँ मतलब everything that you wanted, always wanted, was always given to you. You wish that all the circumstances are exactly suited to what you want, how you want your life to be. uh, all the decisions, all the choices that you made, everything needs to be, everything should be like correct, and there should be nothing bad or nothing harmful or whatever negative that should happen to you. These are the wishes that every human being has, and it's very natural to have that. So whenever you don't have that, then you try to find solace. A lot of the people find solace with faith, that ठीक है मतलब अभी नहीं हुआ बट होपफुली हो जाएगा. इफ आई प्रे टू समवन दैट पर्सन विल फिक्स ऑल द प्लैनेट्स इन द राइट वे, एंड एक ना एक दिन मेरा हो जाएगा जो होगा. सो लॉट ऑफ दैट रिलीजन कम्स थ्रू दैट, which so initially when I used to think of, I mean, like I said, when with the start of the religion, you're always fascinated with all those rituals and things. Then comes a point when you start thinking, what is the point of all this? I mean, any person who believes enough in science and reason would be like, ये क्या चल रहा है, मतलब doesn't make any sense. And it was getting to a point, I would be a little ashamed to say this, but it was getting to a point where I used to be a little like condescending with people who were following religion. Be like, कैसे लोग हैं, मतलब बुद्धू लोग, they don't understand what is ये है वो है, मतलब just follow science. इतना evidence है कि there is no God in this. So you start thinking of yourself as someone who, हाँ, it just, I feel there are a lot of people who, once they become atheists, they tend to do that.
Then they become the enlightened ones.
But then, there is a very strong argument with faith and religion. The argument is that, for me, I feel that human beings, for them to achieve something, sometimes for them to achieve things that seem impossible, things that seem like this is just not possible. For example, there is a situation where there's a building which is on fire, like it's like totally up, completely up in flames, and there is some kid that is inside, right? And there's this firefighter who comes, and there is absolutely no chance, lag hi nahi raha hai ki he is going to save it. So at that point, will the firefighter think, okay, there is this 99.9% probability that I'm not going to save, so let's just back out? Nahi, aisa nahi hai. There is that humanity aspect of it where he feels, no, we have to go in the building, we try, jo bhi hoga dekha jayega, and then he steps in anyway, irrespective of the amount of risk that was involved. With religion also, I think it's that sometimes it makes people faithful in a good way, and where they would otherwise not have the courage to do something impossible or seemingly impossible. For a rational person, it will just be a calculation ki yaar ye to nahi ho payega. So then I started having a lot more respect for these people, and I realized, for humanity as such to exist, for we as a species, we as a community to survive on this planet, faith is a very important aspect. And agar religion chala jayega to I don't know, it's a lot of the positivity that's there in the world will go away, I feel.
I think he refers to an important point, which would be more than things like style, and not that those aren't important questions to ask, but is then what are the songs about? Because those are the ones that inform the way you think, right? Just like for me, a lot of the music that I listen to might inform the way I think or my attitude. And that's why some parents are opposed to their kids listening to heavy metal music, because
Or rap music.
or whatever, or rap
Some
music and
music.
things like that, right? But then there would be that thing of what would a lot of this music be about? What would the songs be about? Would they be about occasions? Would they be stories? Would they be history? For example, in which case they'd be extremely useful, right? Um, would they be a question of instilling some sort of collective faith in, uh, you know, in the common good? I'm not necessarily referring to faith in a god or a deity or something like that, but in let's say common good of humankind, things like that. So that I think is fairly interesting as to what are these songs about. And I would find that the songs that um, uh, that actually allow people to express their spirituality, and experience their spirituality, are worth a lot more than those that just praise God needlessly. You know, those don't make any sense to me. And
Are there musicians which we don't know about who were great musicians who played mostly, if not exclusively, religious music?
if we don't know about them, then
General people, which you would know about, which you have heard.
solely playing religious music.
Not solely, but their basic career came out of that.
The two of us might know similar guys. I mean, a lot of the drummers that we follow, especially the new chaps, most of those guys are all, gospel guys, the new guys, and they're all
Any names on?
African American. There's Thomas Pridgeon, there's Tony Royster,
There's Aaron Spears.
Aaron
there's
Spears.
Eric Moore.
What's that boy, snarky puppy chap? Both
Yeah.
of them, in fact.
What was his name?
Larry something.
Larnell Lewis.
Larnell Lewis, yeah. And these guys are maniacal.
Yeah.
They're very good. They're really,
Same
really
there.
good. And there's
Even
a
some of the
keyboard
older
player.
chaps also.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys who
Stanley Randolph, who played
Yeah,
with
yeah.
this guy, who played with
Hmm.
Stevie Wonder. Later
Yeah.
time with Stevie Wonder, Stanley Randolph was there. Chris Dave. He's also very, very gospel-y. He has an Instagram page where it's just dedicated to religion, but it's like really funny. He keeps sharing all these weird movements in church, where it's all about music only, but it's really funny.
I saw one interview with a heavy metal drummer as well,
Achha.
and white man, but extremely religious. So I don't know if he was, if they were playing that music in church, but
Nathan East, bass player,
he's very religious.
he's proper gospel, coming from gospel. Greg Fillingens, who played for Toto and for Stevie Wonder, was
Who's that guy again? It's not the Corey something.
Corey.
Corey Henry, I think.
Oh yeah.
Also gospel guy.
That's giving me a weird segue, but I'm gonna take it because let's move to culture, because you just said that parents don't want their children to listen to a certain kind of music, but
I said just like some parents, right? It's not a
generally
blanket
parents
statement.
don't like it.
It's not. It's not a blanket statement. I know a lot of parents who do like for their kids to listen to as much music as they can.
So through that, that's how culturally music is very different. It displays what the culture of a country is, of a civilization, if not a country, in the boundary form we know it.
Yeah. I think that, like, the culture discussion you might want to keep separate because it's huge. It's a really big one, right?
Oh, we can start it right now.
It's really big. Yeah, I guess so. But it's yeah.
What would you start it with?
With culture, I don't know. The word itself is, in the sense, it's much younger than civilization. Okay, and then the way we understand the word in its
Culture would be younger than civilization?
the word culture
Okay.
would be younger than civilization itself,
Okay.
and so obviously the concept would be younger,
Okay.
right? Just like like, for example, the concept of a joint stock company, right? is it's a new concept. You know, if you compare to the length of of time that civilization has been around, right? So similarly, the idea of culture has been around, or has, um, especially in its present colloquial sense, the way we understand it, right, has been around only probably since the 1800s or so. Before that, it was very strictly used, particularly by the French, and then, I mean, and way before that by the by the Latin guys and all that. But it was meant, it was used specifically for cultivation, okay, and it had to do with people growing things, really. And then that got sort of absorbed into, we're going to educate people so that they can grow in the way we wish them to grow. And then this tied in really well with the industrial age, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to make people who were productive, and so then they would basically make them cultural. And as part of that cultural thing would come recreation, if you could afford it. And that as part of that recreation would come the arts, right? But see, that's where it gets complicated. Today, for us, it's all the same thing. But there was a point in time when it wasn't exactly the same thing. The arts existed long before culture did. You know what I'm saying?
So one of the things about music and culture is that we see, if two cultures interact, one of the first things which interact is the art between them. If not one of the first things, but one of the significant things, which the meeting of arts.
I thought it was food. At least, okay.
Food
Personally,
is art. Food is art.
personally for me, मैं तो खाना ही देखता हूँ. कहीं भी पहुँचे खाना दो पहले.
But music changes because of cultures meeting, and their music sort of influence each other. Their art sort of influences each other. What have been some of the most significant changes
I don't think it's because of cultures meeting, because I think like culture is already met in that sense, but I think it's of people meeting. So that's when influences bleed into each other. But the cultures generally, I think it's already broad and sort of generally unified.
The major aspects, though, matlab, I don't know. I don't think we can comprehensively say what all happened. Like, one very clear aspect that happened was white people talking about blues. That was a huge.
Yeah.
It was a remarkable step in at least contemporary music, so to speak. White people and blues were like apples and oranges. So suddenly, it made sense. And a lot of people started talking about it, and it just spread like wildfire among all the white people. So that, I think, was a significant development, at least in the Western music scene.
Do you have any idea if gospel music is close to African religious music in any way? So as to
No, it's not.
It's not at all.
I wouldn't say not at all. It's very possible that it could have definitely begun with some references to places like Ghana and Senegal, maybe even Kenya. But
at least the music sounds very different.
Yeah.
African music and gospel, and
melodically and rhythmically, it's nothing similar.
They're quite far apart, I feel.
Yeah, and the African rhythms and all are still
Yeah.
very, very complex and very intricate. I think there's a lot more commonality between African folk cultures and our folk cultures and the desert folk cultures, etc., and all, than there is between the black people
In America.
who are, they are a way unto themselves now, right? And they've had to, for whatever reasons, I mean, they've been persecuted, and they've had it really, really tough, and they continue to have it tough. So they've actually had to carve themselves out into a virtually new kind of people, because they got freedom, but they got freedom into a world that they didn't know how to identify with, right? Into a thought process that was just genetically coming from somewhere totally different, right? And it's really interesting, but no matter where you would encounter a black person, you'd find that they'd say ask in pretty much the same way they'd say as axe. Right? It doesn't really matter, whereas a white accent would change drastically. Right? So they've had to sort of forge their way out unto themselves, and I think a large part of that has been to just let go of what they left behind.
Last question. You said affordability changed a lot of things. You didn't say that. I'm paraphrasing, but that also shows something that music in a civilization is a sign of prosperity. That so as to how much of the civilization is aware of music, and as affordability has decreased, I mean, more people can afford to buy instruments, and more people can listen to a lot more music. Music has changed. I mean, about 100 years ago, nobody had earphones and speakers, and now everybody has them, and now everybody is listening to music.
Yeah.
That has changed music a lot. It's
Yeah.
become a lot easier to listen to.
Yeah, no, that's a culture, for example.
Yeah. So, how much of a role is that in this expansive history of music?
A role in what?
How has
In terms of how music, easy access of music has changed music? Is that the question?
the question is how prosperity and music have a relationship.
Well, we see it even now, actually. There are a lot of guys who can actually afford to become musicians, right? Even though they're terrible at it, and they can afford to stay terrible at it as well, because they don't need to work hard to make sure that they're playing gigs and that they're playing good gigs and getting good gigs. And it's true all across the world, even here. But I think it's look at it from a consumption side first. If you're worried about making ends meet, and you're working hard for hours and hours a day, it's going to be difficult for you to take out the time or even the money to set aside to say, okay, I'm going to go and invest in a good system, or let's say pods or whatever they are, or go and watch a film or things like that, because your priorities are just so different. Your work hours, you leave home at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, you're working for 12 hours a day, you get back home, you just about have enough energy to eat, go back to sleep, right? And it's still that way for those who actually, for the guys who really, really work, it is still very much like that, So for them to be, they're not consuming the kind of music that we're consuming. Those guys aren't sitting around listening to Lamb of God or whatever that guy's name is, one of these rappy boys.
Rappy boys.
One of the rappers.
Rappy boys.
Whatever, Eminem or whatever it is, those guys aren't listening to them and getting exposure to those guys, and they might have heard Om Jai Jagdish, because at some point they got married, and and one of the family members said you got to be whatever it is, right? But recreationally, there's very little access that those guys have, where they can choose to say, I'm not going to do anything else and just appreciate the arts. I'm going to go and visit the National Museum, okay, and I'm going to take in whatever's going on over there. It just doesn't happen, right? So then it becomes different strokes for different folks, man. But I mean, affordability, it's always been a big... Mozart wouldn't have been able to... We wouldn't have heard Mozart if there weren't people who could afford to pay him to just do nothing but make music. He had patronage, right, from various people. So he was in someone's court in Austria and someone's court somewhere else, and this, that, and the other. And
now and then you keep hearing about struggling musicians, right? People who, for a long time in their lives, were just playing around in bars and restaurants, and very late in their lives they got famous. Someone like this guy, Seal, the Kiss from a Rose guy. So he used to play at least what I've heard, at one place constantly in like a hotel kind of thing for many, many years, until some producer came and heard him. The same story with this chap, the Shape of You, Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, same story. He's written a lot of songs, playing around, traveling here and there, and
He got
playing around
famous
small
quite early.
places.
In his
Yeah, but
opinion.
I mean, he for many years he started
Okay.
writing much younger, and then he exposed his music to the world much.
But he had
like-
to really work. Yeah. Really?
until
Wow.
some guy found him, and some producer found him, and then they got together and stuff like that. So you keep listening to these stories. In fact, I would say the guys, most of the guys who are at the absolute top, absolute best musicians in the world, that that move a lot of people, except for I think maybe the pop artists, most of them have had extremely, extremely difficult lives before they became famous or whatever. Tina Turner had an I think, if I remember the story correctly, she was supposed to audition for something, or she was supposed to go for a recording, and she was just out of this huge domestic violence incident from her husband, and she just ran with her kids, escaping the whole thing, and that she had no place to stay or something like that, and she just, the next day morning, she had a recording, and she had to go and she had to do it, and she never looked back since. At least that's what the legend is. I don't know the
No,
exact story.
it's true. It is, yeah.
So, a lot of stories, if you actually go into musicians' lives, you'll hear the stories like these only. And you will see that they are very commonplace, It's not like, oh, this is a unique, this thing. But that also explains why they are at the top, because they are extremely humble people. They've had extremely humble beginnings. They have come from this struggle, desperation. It's like next day they're not even sure whether they'll live or whether they'll die. Us situations, you have faced that in your lives. Most people who we encounter don't have lives like that. They have everything set out for them. They have comfortable, nothing wrong with it. It's just they don't know what it's like, right? So then they really work on the few things that they are really good at, and then they learn and mature in the world that they're exposed to very early. So they know, okay, these are the things that I'm good at, these are the things that are, if it's going to make me big, then I really have to work, and there is no way I'll slack and be lazy and be like nahi karna hai. And so they're always delivering, always a notch above everyone else, because they've had those beginnings.
I believe rap is pretty similar. At least if you don't look at the recent
Yeah.
few artists coming out of it, it was a
Yeah.
way of getting out of the life of a
Rap was
drug
also
dealer and becoming
predominantly a
a
black movement, right? Yeah, blacks anyways have had a terrible, terrible history.
You just look at the whole, the Grammys and the Oscars and the Kennedy Center Awards and the Nobels and this. I mean, all these guys who are attending, they all dressed in bow ties, and it's like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of wealth flying around. Who's sponsoring our, all our festivals and stuff like that, right? It's all the guys with the money, and again, it's not a bad thing, because uh, it does a couple of things. They're the guys who make the money. The musicians aren't, very clearly, so they keep the economy moving, which is fabulous, and they put some of it back into the arts, and so it lets the arts flourish, and it also then inspires other people to work hard for something, right? So in that sense, that cycle works great, but there is very much a linkage between affordability and at least consumption.
Hmm.
That for sure, not necessarily creation.
Hmm. Creation, though, natural. Humans by themselves are very creative, whatever their beginnings are. I really don't think what affordability can do is maybe sharpen their tools. So what I mean is, the way I express myself can be fine tuned, can be improved upon, but the expression itself cannot really change. It will
Yeah.
come from who I am as a person, right? So I can be equipped with these tools and with these methods, techniques that I can use to express myself as best as I want it to be. Or it might be like really raw, like Robert Johnson taking one string guitar and just playing the blues, hardly tuned, voice cracking, that sort of a. But still, the expression is always there, and because it's an art form, that's what matters at the end. How emotionally vested you are.
I guess we can close with that for today.
Let us. Tanmay, thank you.
Thanks, Saira and Amy again.
Did it
for
shut
being
down?
on the camera.
No? Cool.